I am so excited to spend a little bit of time with Riley Wiesinger. She's a PMSC, Pennsylvania Mountain Service Corps alumni. And I am Teresa Wolf. I serve as PMSC's outreach coordinator. Happy to be spending a little bit of time with Riley this afternoon. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself and what she's currently doing, and then also where and when she served as a PMSC member and what she did while she was serving. So, welcome, Riley.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Riley Wiesinger, and I am the recruitment and outreach coordinator for the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps.
Wow.
And I started with the Pennsylvania Mountain Service Corps in 2020, October of 2020, and my host site was the Blair County Planning Commission. And the needs for my service were to identify environmental issues within the community spaces around Pennsylvania and figure out how to bridge those two components together, community and environment.
Okay, so that's an amazing goal. And you were serving for a full term, a full year?
Yes, I was.
Okay, perfect. And so, could you tell us a little bit about sort of your day to day and then maybe some highlights or some challenges you faced during your service term, Riley?
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely an interesting question because my work challenge was working through a global pandemic at the time. So there were many unknowns. I maybe went into my host site a total of 10 times due to social distant regulations with my office. So it was a very remote position that I didn't have much experience with before, but that certainly influenced the spark of creativity throughout my career that my host site was supportive of, which I'm very appreciative and grateful for. Figuring out how to bring people together in a time surrounded by so much uncertainty.
Wow.
Made me realize it's very important to create that space for our community.
Wow, is it ever? And you were like really thrust into it at that time and really had to be creative. So, can you maybe share about a time when you sort of met that challenge and came up with a creative solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what my host site had recommended, we had thrown out a couple of ideas, but obviously during the pandemic, a lot of our partners and connections were not able to meet us certain ways, right? So environmentally, we had projects that we wanted to complete, but were either canceled or were hard to navigate just with the pandemic going on at the time. We really had to start from ground zero. And I took that as an opportunity to really engage with our community of Altoona and Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. So this all started with also identifying what needs of community partnerships at the time really could use some extra help. People need volunteers. What's being neglected at a time where resources are so limited, right? So I had reached out to local gardens, local community gardens, local cemeteries, and most importantly, local parks to see what the needs were. And I connected those needs with our wonderful volunteers that we had collected throughout this time, and we did the thing.
Wow. So you were able to, even despite the challenges, find ways to safely and in regarding all of the required precautions, to find a way to still connect people, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it felt really amazing too.
Yeah.
At this time, a lot of my peers had actually been sent back for school. So, going back to universities at the time was a little bit of a pause. A lot of people's plans were on pause, and a lot of people went home throughout this year to spend time with their families. And this really provided them with something to do and something to do safely outside.
Yeah, so you were taking what seemed like, it was like a disappointing thing and turning it into an opportunity. That's really amazing, and engaging people in your community in service that they probably would have been just sitting home and wasting time in a lot of ways, and instead you used that as a leverage point. That's incredible. That's really incredible that you were able to grow in that way as a leader and really stretch outside your own ideas and the ideas of the people that you were connecting with. My goodness. So, okay, you definitely grew as a leader during this time and grew in creativity and resourcefulness. And now you're still in this world of serving and connecting people. And so it seems like your term of AmeriCorps service definitely had an impact on your career. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout my service term, I obviously realized that people need each other, they need connection, they need opportunities to feel comfortable in actively participating towards change, especially when it comes to the spaces that they live in. And ironically enough, that really set me up for the role I currently am in now, recruiting people for the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps. My job is to connect youth and young adults to our conservation training program, where they complete projects throughout state parks and forests and public lands. And it's very similar to what I was doing previously throughout my service term. So I'm really appreciative of having that opportunity a couple of years ago, because I found it somehow to do it through my local community at a very difficult time. And it's definitely hard to recruit on a state level, but I feel like it isn't as difficult as that service term. So.
Wow, you really learned how to be resourceful and to really use the the resources and the opportunities and the people, the relationships, even that you have in at your discretion, at your disposal, I guess, in a way, to make the most of them. I really can see like a direct correlation between your service term and your this career path that you're on right now. So wow, amazing. I'm really I'm so thankful for this conversation because we don't take the time often, I think, to reflect on the year of 2020 and all of what we learned during that time. We look, I think as a person, I look back on that time as just, it was so challenging and da 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 da, but there were so many ways that we grew as leaders and people during that time, and I can really see that evidenced in you and talking with you. Speaking of people and connections during that time period, could you talk a little bit about maybe a person or a couple of people relationships that were significant or maybe still are significant from your term of service?
Yeah, of course. So during this time where I was putting on projects, as I had mentioned before, I'd reached out to a lot of community partners, and I very involved with our local cemeteries, actually, which I was not expecting, but is actually rely a lot on volunteers, which was surprising to me, and really, really forming that connection with the local community and what they need, like parks and recreations. I have always worked in state parks, but I didn't really have too in depth of a relationship with our local parks and rec. Wow. So it an interesting perspective to me to realize, Parks and Rec also accepts volunteers.
Wow.
I worked a lot with community gardens through that time, which honestly, I didn't know there were that many community gardens through areas. And what was kind of shocking to me was I am a Altoona local. Like, I was born and raised in Altoona, PA. And I didn't know about these opportunities to volunteer.
Wow.
So it was very eye-opening to me to realize what I was missing right in front of me.
Right.
And I was very fortunate to connect other people with these resources. But yeah, even for myself, I look back and think, I'm really glad I made that phone call, because if not, then no, I could do this.
My goodness, yeah, that's the truth. Like, and so often I think that there are so many opportunities for growing, for learning, for really thriving in our local communities. And like you said, people who we're born and raised in the region, in the area, and we don't even know that they exist. And so your role maybe while it may be different than what you anticipated, it is so meeting a critical need in human relationship building. My goodness. And during that pandemic time, did we learn, goodness, did we learn how important human relationships are for us and our mental, physical well being? So, wow, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for taking advantage of the opportunities, thinking outside the box, being creative, all the things, Riley. And as you know, we're in the middle of our 30th year of service as Pennsylvania Mountain Service Corps. So I'm interested and hopeful that maybe you have a word of encouragement for members who are in the second half of their service term this year.
Absolutely, yes. If you're in your second half, congratulations. I know that it takes a lot of courage and at times a lot of stepping back and realizing what the important mission and goal of this term is. But I promise you, this is actually my first of 2 AmeriCorps terms. I came back for a second one, so wow. There is so much opportunity and space to grow, and you really just need to lean into it. You're going to have challenges throughout the year, of course, but like myself, I look back on my AmeriCorps term all the time because it really set me up for success with my current role. And I also have the opportunity to push people into these kinds of roles. You know, AmeriCorps is huge, so there's a lot of different opportunities for you.
Wow, thank you. That is a good word from someone who's been there and walked that path in a very challenging time. And I thank you so much for spending these moments with me. I know that you are in the midst of training your new group of folks who are starting their own terms of with the outdoor corps. And so thanks for stepping away from that for just a moment to reflect on really just what an impact you made and how much influence you have had in the community, continue to have in the community, and how your service term impacted you. So thank you, Riley, so much. Thanks for all you've done and continue to do to bring out the best of Pennsylvania and of America.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.